All right, hello everyone, and welcome to day 3 of the 2021 Better Buildings, Better Plant Summit. I'm glad to have you all here with us today to kick the day off. We are going to be moving beyond energy today and talking more about energy and water. If you could show the name of this session here. We have a wonderful set of speakers today from 3 different sectors, so we'll really be able to highlight creative solutions and best practices. But before we get started, I do want to cover just a couple of housekeeping items. The first is that today's session will be recorded and archived on the Better Buildings Solutions Center. So we'll definitely follow up with all attendees when that's available on the Solutions Center, so you can click on the links and go back and view the slides. Additionally, you all have probably noticed that our attendees are on listen-only mode, which means that you can't unmute yourself. However, you'll still have plenty of opportunities to engage with us and ask questions, and I'll tell you more about that in just a moment. Additionally, if you do end up having any audio or video issues or tech issues that we can assist with, you can go ahead and put that into the Zoom chat, and we'll have someone on tech support try to assist you with that. Next slide, please. I'm your moderator today. My name is Hannah Debelius, and I'm a fellow in the Building Technologies Office at the Department of Energy. And I have the privilege of working with the Better Buildings program, most closely with commercial real estate and higher education sectors, but also on a couple of other opportunities. Today, on our session, we are going to be starting off with a bit of an introduction to tell you what's been going on with Better Buildings and Water over the last year or so. Then we have 3 wonderful speakers, Jaime Gonzalez Brana from the who will be covering water saving strategies at Owens Corning, Joan Kowal, who will be covering water reclamation at Emory University, and then Ken Rosenfeld, who will be covering the BOMA W² challenge. We'll also save plenty of time for Q&A so that everyone in the audience will get an opportunity to ask the questions of our different panelists. So next slide, please. Speaking of Q&A and how you'll engage with us, today we'll be using a platform called Slido to do that polling and interactive engagement. So right now, if you could either open your mobile device or a separate browser, you're going to go to slido.com. You're going to put in the event code DOE, and then from a dropdown, you're going to choose this session, which is called When Progress Flows. So again, open up a new browser or your mobile device, slido.com, enter the event code DOE. You might have to click a join button there, and then you'll choose When Progress Flows from the dropdown. You also have the opportunity to just click the link that is now in the Zoom chat if you have that open. In addition to doing some polls in this, we'll also be doing Q&A. So at any time, if you have a question, you can go over to the Q&A tab and put in your question there, and we'll get to it at the end of this session. So hopefully everyone has had a moment or two to log on to Slido. So with that, I think we're going to go ahead and launch our first poll. The first one's an easy question, I hope, which is just, what sector are you from? All right, coming out strong with higher education, which is wonderful, especially since one of our speakers is from Emory University. Industrial manufacturing, another sector represented here on our panel today. State and local government, multifamily housing, commercial real estate, wonderful. Contractors. All right, excellent. Looks like a big showing from industrial manufacturing. And it looks like also Slido must be working for most people. So with that, I'd like to launch our second poll, please. And this is, has your organization maybe made a public commitment to a water savings goal? And if so, what is that commitment? So this is an open-ended, and we are curious if you have made a commitment to a water savings goal. So maybe it's all right, some no's. Some yeses. If it's a yes, you can put in another response because I'm curious to know if it's a percentage. Let's see, 20% achieved, said another 20%. I wonder if that's one of our Better Buildings water goal achievers, which would be wonderful. 15% reduction, 10%, 20%. All right. Excellent. And then some no's. Well, I hope that for the no's that have joined us today, you get some tips. And perhaps you'll be interested in setting a goal or perhaps even joining the Better Buildings Water Savings initiative here. We can work with you on that. Okay, so 2% per year. So it's interesting. I'm seeing a mix of, annual goals and then larger percentage goals. All right, I think we can go ahead and launch the next poll, please, which is that we are wondering if you all could help us a little bit of feedback for our program here, which is that would you be interested in joining the Better Buildings Water Savings Initiative by committing a portfolio-wide water savings, or instead participate in something that's a solutions-based partnership without the water savings commitment? So what we're asking here is if you'd be interested in, kind of that data and commitment piece to pursue, or if you're interested in more something that's resource-based and it's creating solutions. All right, a lot of both either, which is great because that draws on the things we're doing for Better Buildings already. Okay, and a lot of interest, a third of you, for commitment to a solution-based partnership. And I will say that we've been actively, reorganizing and redoing a bit of our water resources and how we present those in the Better Building Solution Center. So I think that for those of you that might be interested in a solution-based approach, we have some options that you can check out already. All right, excellent. Thank you all so much. We've got just 2 more polls for you before we get into our session today. So we can go ahead and launch the next one, which is that we want to know what are the main barriers of your organization that are preventing greater water savings. So what's the challenge here? What's preventing you from achieving those goals that we heard about a couple polls ago? All right, generating organizational buy-in is coming to the top. That's interesting because actually yesterday in the waste session, that also rose to the top as a really large challenge. So that's interesting feedback. And monitoring and tracking data, for sure. Isn't data always the challenge there? Okay, and then also budget and financing. Yeah, certainly I know, with the effects of the pandemic as well, a lot has changed in budget and financing, and that's rising to the top, especially for all of our higher education partners that have joined the call today. All right, wonderful. Thank you so much for the feedback. We're going to launch our last poll here, which is what type of resource would be most valuable to your organization? So your options here, again, a solution is what we refer to as kind of a case study, or could be a tool, like a solution at a glance. Peer exchange is what it sounds like. It's a webinar. It's getting people together to really just share, laterally options they have. And then assistance with data access is kind of traditional Better Buildings route of technical assistance and with our data team. All right, I'm seeing a lot of answers for solutions from other Better Buildings partners, which is great to know. And peer exchanges. Good, that makes me excited then for our Q&A today. Hopefully you all have some good questions for your wonderful peers on the line. All right, excellent. Well, thank you so much for using Slido and also getting set up and helping us out with those polls. I think that also gives our speakers a little bit of a better idea of who we have on the line today and what you might be most interested in. Before I introduce our speakers, I have just a couple other things that I'd like to go through on the Better Buildings side of things for water. The first is just talking a little bit more about the Better Buildings Water Savings Initiative. It sounds like we might have some partners that are former goal achievers or currently in the program pursuing a 20% reduction over 10 years. So that's great, and that is the Better Buildings Water Commitment. And when you commit with that, you have access to technical assistance, recognition, such as through goal achievement, but also with those solutions that we've just talked so much about. And then also anyone can go into the Better Buildings Solution Center and access proven solutions and resources. As I've mentioned, we've just made some updates to that page, and we'll continue to do so. So when these slides are available to you, you can go ahead and click that link. I also would like to give a sincere congratulations to our 2020 Goal Achiever for Water, which is the University of Nebraska Medical Center. They've had the incredible accomplishment of 23% water use intensity reduction over 7 million square feet of their portfolio this year. They've also published a solution with us on employee engagement program, but it's really excellent, and I can't understate what a huge commitment that was for them to undertake. And just a big congratulations for achieving that, especially this year when we know what a trying year it's been overall, and especially for our healthcare facilities. So congrats, University of Nebraska Medical Center. They also have joined a wonderful list of other goal achievers for water that you can see here. So the last couple of years, we've had a lot of goal achievers, a strong representation from the industrial manufacturing sector, which is great. Perhaps that's what also is drawing people to our session today. But it's a great, and you can find solutions from all those people on our Better Building Solutions Center. So with that, I'm excited to dive into our panel. Again, we have 3 wonderful panelists, and I'll be introducing each of them before they speak. But at any time, if you have questions for our panelists, you can go over to Slido and type in your question there. Or if you see another person's question that you like, you can hit the little thumbs up icon, and that will submit a vote for it. And questions that have the most votes will come to the top. And so we'll be able to prioritize those in the Q&A section. So with that, our first speaker today is Jaime Gonzalez Brana, and he's the waste reduction engineer for Owens Corning's Composite Solutions business. He's been with the company for 3 years and has been in his current role since 2018. So thank you so much for joining us, and Jaime, you can take it away.
All right. Thank you very much for the introduction, Hannah, and good morning, everybody. Very exciting to be here today with you and sharing some of the initiatives we have at Owens Corning regarding water reduction, reuse, and creative solutions. For today's agenda.
Sorry, to interrupt, could I just ask, I think you might have forgotten to turn your camera on, and we'd love to see you engage with us.
Yeah, my apologies. There we go. Better? Yeah, so for today's agenda, I would like to start off with talking a little bit about Owens Corning, our organization. Then I will be talking a little bit about Owens Corning sustainability efforts, goals, and progress. And then at the end, I would end the session talking a little bit about some of the projects we have ongoing and have implemented in our plans regarding water conservation, reusing this water, and water reduction as well. So to start off, Owens Corning at a glance. So Owens Corning is a global enterprise with 2020 sales of $7.1 billion. We have 19,000 employees and a presence in 33 countries. And for 66 consecutive years, we've been part of the Fortune 500 company. We serve the residential, commercial, and industrial markets. Our 3 main businesses are insulation, roofing, and composites. Next slide. So Owens Corning innovation is all around us. We see it how we move, where we live, what we do, how we power our lives. So each of our businesses is a world leader in delivering a variety of insulation and roofing products to keep our homes, commercial buildings, and the people in them safe, comfortable, and dry. We also produce the glass fiber in engineered composite materials that is used in everything from automobiles, bridges, wind energy, and personal electronics, just to name a few. Next slide. So what sustainability means to us, to Owens Corning, as you can read the definition there, for us it means meeting the needs of the present while leaving the world a better place for the future. So how do we assess our progress of this aspiration we have, right? So we do the math. We do want to be a net positive company aspiration. So we look at where we are on our positive impact or our handprint. That should be greater than our negative impact, our footprint. Next slide. Yeah, so we consider the future in everything we do at Owens Corning. So these are the 4 pillars that represent the comprehensive global and sustainability strategy that guide the way we drive and execute and attain our goals. The first pillar, safety, health, community. So we have managed to reduce our injuries over 90% since our 2020, since our baseline year of 2002. From the operations pillar, we at Owens Corning was among the first companies to set a holistic footprint reduction goals. From a product and supply chain pillar, our sustainable and product strategy includes being leaders in transparency. And lastly, innovation and collaboration pillar, we work with our customers to improve energy efficiency and durability of their products. So reducing our environmental footprint, we have very ambitious goals for this new set of goals for 2030. We aim to cut the negative impact of our operations in half. And in this slide right here, you can see our 6 goals that we're trying to achieve. So we're looking at reducing greenhouse emissions from our operations by half, cutting our emissions, the VOCs and particulate matter in half as well, switching to 100% renewable electricity, sending zero waste to landfill by the end of 2030. And also the focus of this call is, cutting in half the amount of water we take from the local water supply. And we also want to develop biodiversity goals by 2025. So this is just a quick slide on our progress from our set of goals, of past goals from 2010 to 2020 on the progress on that. So as you can see here, we have met 4 out of our 6 objectives in primary energy, greenhouse emissions, particulate matter, and water. Toxic air emissions and waste to landfill, we're lacking a little bit. I think for our company, the biggest challenge has been, achieving our waste to landfill goals. As you can see from the slide, we're far away from that target. And the focus of this session today is water. As you can see, we achieved our goal, exceeding it by 8% for this set of goals. So since then, we have a new set of goals, and the progress from 2020 towards that set of goals to 2030. We aim to cut in half the amount we take from local water supplies in places where water is limited in quality or quality. So, based on our performance targets, we have 2 different ones. So the first one is 50% aggregate intensity reduction of water withdrawal in high water stress sites from 2018 baseline. So as you can see from the chart right there, from our baseline year 2018, we have achieved a 10 improvement from the base year. And then the other performance objective, it's remaining flat or reducing aggregate water withdrawal intensity at all remaining sites from 2018 baseline, and we have achieved a 20% improvement so far. So we have made good progress, but we're gonna keep making that progress in order to meet our 2030 goal. So at Owens Corning, we're committed to sourcing and using water wisely. So a little bit about what is our strategy and approach. So we look at 5 different pillars here. So we do have a sustainability mapping tool during the development of all our new and significantly modified products. We also perform life cycle assessments and product stewardship reviews of our products. And then the 3 other pillars that I'll be focusing a little bit today and sharing some of those projects with you guys are increasing water efficiency, recirculating water, and recycling water. So this is what we do. This is our strategy and approach into reducing, our water goal. So I want to talk a little bit about, this reuse, category first for the product that I'll be sharing. This project is from our composite side of the business, from our glass reinforcements facilities, more specific. So just to give a little bit of background on where the wastewater from this process comes from. So as you can see to your left side on the first image, we like I said, this is from our glass reinforcement side of the business. So we produce those glass fibers. So as we can see from this image, we see the glass strands, hanging from the bushings. And at the very top, we do have a spray ramp that is used to spray some water in the glass, so that it provides some cooling for the glass. And then at the bottom there in the middle, we have the binder application that that generates some water as well, that falls into the next floor, which is the first floor, and provides some of that wastewater. So for the first floor, we're looking at the winder level. So this is where the glass fibers are winded. And we do get some water from the spin effect of the cakes that is released to the waste tunnel, which is in the basement. So in the basement, this is basically where we collect our glass waste. So our glass waste fibers, and also this wastewater that I was talking about. So this could be the hoppers overflowing, the water going on the sides that was in the image, or we do have some hoppers as well that have some holes in the side, so we can drain that water as well. So from this process, we didn't implement a wastewater plant treatment. And the first step in here is that it goes to the equalization tank. So if you can go to the next slide. The first step in here is the equalization tank. So here's where all the residual water is received. The purpose of the equalization tank is that it acts as a buffer. So it collects all the incoming water that comes at fluctuating rates. And then it passes on to the next step in the treatment at a steady flow rate. So step number 2 is the dispensers, which is where the physical and chemical treatment happens. Step number 3, moving on, is the first decanter we have. So this is where the solids and the liquids are separated. From here on, that wastewater goes on to the biological tank. Here's where this biological tank is pumped full of oxygen, and by area in the wastewater, it increases the microbial growth, which is speeds up the decomposition of the organic matter that's still in that water that we need for this step. In step 5, we have a second decanter as well. Again, we're separating some of that solid from the liquid. And then we get to our last step, which is step number 6, which is reverse osmosis, where here we separate the residual water and the reject water from the process. So the majority of the contaminants are removed from here. So from here, so it would be 50% of that on residual water goes back into the cooling towers. That's where it's being used. The other 50%, which is the reject water, goes into irrigating the company fields. For this project, by implementing this wastewater treatment system, the plant was able to reduce consumption by more than 100,000 cubic meters per year, representing 100K dollars per year in savings. So very significant amount. And when we're looking at the project cost and the payback, this project cost was around $200,000, and we got a payback of 4 months. So very, very exciting project we had at the plant. Next slide. So for the rain harvesting system, one of our facilities was able to, identify that they could use an alternative source of water in harvesting rainwater, and this would be captured and diverted to storing a rainwater tank, as you can see in the picture below. This is typically collected in roofs and pavements. So like I was mentioning, one of our facilities, implemented and installed this kind of system. The rainwater is mainly used in the cooling towers that feeds the furnace, the refrigeration, radiators, and so on. And one of the things that I want to mention here, where when the plant was considering implementing a rainwater harvesting system, was that they were looking at the intended use of the harvested water, right? Because this will determine the type of treatment of equipment that the system would need. The other thing is that you need to determine if you get a decent amount of rainfall in the area of your plant that would be adequate for the application. You also another good rule of thumb would be choosing a location that has multiple applications that can use rainwater. So for example, this specific example for our plants, we can use this in the cooling towers as well as the irrigation system at the facility. So one of the things when we're looking at, sizing the tank, the rainwater tank, we want to look as, determine how much rainwater is available for harvesting. So, what the plan did is they looked at 2015 to 2017 to estimate the amount of monthly rainwater that they would get over a typical year. So they would be able to estimate how much they can collect from the rooftop or the pavement at this location. Um, Aside from this, you also want to estimate, how much of that application's water demand over the same period, um, just so that you're able to compare if, this harvested water will be, a significant portion that you could use to replace in that application or not. So if you go to the next slide, using this, different set points of data the plant was able to, determine the optimal storage tank size. In this example, it the tank capacity for this, it's 1,500 cubic meters. And in this slide, you can also see some pictures of the project from start to finish. So you can see the first picture, digging the hole, um, you know, installing the tank and pipes and integration, all the way to the fence closure and the pumps and luminaires installation. Next slide. Okay. So this is the water savings Kaizen opportunity that I want to talk about. And before I go into detail into this opportunity, I want to highlight, the great energy program that our company has. That has enabled for the opportunities like this to come along. So just a little bit of about our energy program. In order for this to be so successful as it has been, there has to be a lot of engagements from the plant. So it entails having, an energy champion at each of our locations, and the energy champion, managing an energy team that can assess, do an energy kaizens, or some of you might call it treasure hunts, assess different equipments, best practice sharing, and also attend the monthly call that we have for the composites business on this area. So how does this tie to this? We usually don't have many water kaizens. We like I mentioned, we focus more on the energy side. But one of our plans was able to, use this methodology they have used in the past in the energy program, right? And these energy Kaizen events can either come from the plant energy team, or they can also be initiated, by corporate, by the energy engineer, right? So, the plant was able to integrate what they had learned from previous Kaizens, and doing a water Kaizen saving. The first step for this was, putting a team together and creating a water balance of the plant. So looking at, the water intake, water in, water out, where your losses, looking at the different, piece of the process, and, how much you're consuming at each stage of the process. And then, the second step would have, looking at that assessment, having that team and brainstorming and collecting ideas, to see what they can do to improve, the water consumption. So for this application specific, we're looking at in the picture on the right. So this is the basement level at one of our facilities. They do have a shredder at the bottom of the basement that they use to shred the material to facilitate material handling. The way that the waste is collected here and is generated, it happens at the forming level, at the bushing. So whenever there's an upset in the position, or what we call a breakout, the glass would hang and would immediately start dropping onto the basement, right, onto the shredder. And as you can see in there, in order to push those fibers efficiently into that shredder, water is used. So during this Kaizen, what was noticed is that, this water was continually being used, and there was too much flow. As I mentioned before, there's only need to run this water when there's a breakout, in the process, till we resume that position. So there's really no need to, run that water 24/7. So during this Kaizen, it was, assessed that, we needed to stop that flow and just do it as needed whenever there was a breakout. So step one, was reducing that flow manually and just looking at the savings and the flow of the water. And then the second step, involving a little bit of capital, was automizing that process to open that water valve, to push the glass fibers only during that breakout. So in doing so, the plant was able to, in a monthly basis, reduce water consumption by 90% just in that area, and that represents an annual savings of 150K dollars per year. So very significant, very simple solution that came about from, doing one of these events. So these events are very important to our company in identifying, low cost opportunity, no cost opportunities, and sometimes also capital projects as well. Next slide. Okay, so at Owens Corning, we also try to come up with creative and innovative solutions. So we do have a facility that is one of our largest users of water in Mexico that is testing a new water recycling technology. This site is located in an area where the lack of water is starting to affect the population and industry. The process is based in an electrochemical principles to clean the water. So just to give you a little bit of background, this consists of a device for treating liquid solutions, which uses a hermetic cell, which a voltage is applied to the anode and the cathode, generating an electric field. During the flow of water through said path of the process, it becomes polarized, and therefore the impurities coagulate to be separated instantly. It is a continuous process without residence times for its operations. It does not use any chemicals, which leads to energy savings and infrastructure costs. And it doesn't require any replacing of the electrodes because due to the material they're manufactured with, they don't suffer any wear to that. So this technology, according to the vendor, could reduce up to 47% of our water consumption at that facility, and also decrease 95% of water treatment costs. So this could potentially, be replacing our current waste water treatment facility that we have at a plant. Also, if there was a future expansion, this could prevent from the plan in having to build an additional well for this. So we did it, a trial back with them in 2018, in 2019, with promising results. Right now, we actually installed a pilot plan and it just started running at the end of April. So the idea is that we were gonna be monitoring this pilot process for at least 2 months, analyzing that treated water every week with a certified lab, and following up on a report for all the maintenance, all the filters that need to be changed, any adjustments that we would we'll need to look at when we if we decide to implement this process long term. So basically, this goes along with our long-term strategy to use these systems and process improvements as models for future installation across our operations. So we leverage, best practices from every facility so we can replicate it across the network, right? So very interesting project. This is a project that the organization is very excited about. Um, Next slide. And last but not least, I want to talk a little bit about this opportunity we have from the DOE. We were selected to be part of the DOE's pilot water implant training program. This was a two and a half day activity that trained facility personnel on water efficiency. The objectives of this training was first, teach the participants on how to conduct a planned water balance. Again, like I mentioned before, looking at that water intake, the water in, water out, looking at the losses, and looking at each different piece of the process, how much you're consuming of water at each step. Also helping us how to estimate, the water consumption in those sites that we don't have metering, but we are adding metering to our plants in the future. And then the second piece to that is, quantifying true cost of water. So the event was held at one of our plants in North America. In North America, as we all know, the cost for water is very cheap. And then for this plant in specific, we do have our own wells, and that's where main source of water comes from for this facility. So the mentality going to this into this event was that water for this facility is relatively cheap, and that we think the cost of water is only incurred whenever we treat it or whenever we dispose of that water. But talking to the DO people, that's not really the true cost of water. So they were able to teach us, additional to those costs. There's other pieces that you can add to that cost of the water to be able to quantify the true cost of water. Those are cost of electricity and heating fuel. So the energy used for pumping water, and the heater energy used for discharging in the wastewater as well. So the third part of the objective of this training was splitting up into two teams. And based on the previous training on this water assessment the DOE had done with us, and all the teaching they had provided, we went on ahead to the plan, and we were looking to find water and associated cost saving opportunities. So just to name some of the opportunities identified without going into detail, we're looking at, something very simple as leak correction. So, just fixing those leaks. We're also looking, identified that, at the bushing level, some of those sprays that are, cooling down the glass, on the ends really don't come in contact with the glass, so they're not really necessary. So looking at removing those. Also looking at, removing one of those dehumidifiers we have in the two tunnels during the summer months, and also looking at optimizing chiller control upgrades as well. So key takeaway from here is that, at Owens Corning, we take advantage of, trainings, webinars, either, in person, virtual. We do encourage our employees to take advantage of these opportunities, and it's a great way to bring in new ideas back into the facilities and implementing those as well. So with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Jaime. We appreciate that, and you certainly got a lot of interest in the rainwater harvesting in our Q&A, so I look forward to getting to those at the end of this. I'm going to move forward here, and I am excited to introduce Joan Kowal, who's the Senior Director of Resilience and Utility Strategies at Emory University, a position within campus services created to align the planning and design of all utilities more closely for the Emory enterprise, while focusing on meeting resiliency and sustainability objectives. Joan joined Emory in 2013 and received Emory's Award of Distinction for her contributions to meeting Emory's energy reduction goals in 2017. So Joan, excited to hear from you.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Hannah. Appreciate the introduction, and good morning, everyone. For those of you who might have been at Better Buildings 5 years ago, we presented on the Waterhub. We just celebrated our 6-year anniversary. So this is a picture of the inside of the Waterhub. So it doesn't quite look like your typical water reclamation facility. So interested to give you all a little case study and lessons learned over the last 6 years. So we'll move forward. Emory University, for those that might not be aware, is located right outside Atlanta, contiguous with the Center for Disease Control. So if you've been watching the nightly news, where they report from CDC often, we're just over the shoulder of the reporter. So we have 15,000 students, approximately 30,000 employees, 9 million square feet, and 130 buildings. And I'm pretty sure our research numbers have ticked up from the 628, especially with the COVID research, which Emory has been working closely with CDC. So the Waterhub was really the result of Emory looking at both global concerns and local concerns. We are located in a very limited watershed location where, as you can see, local concern, largest municipality on a smallest watershed. We tend to fight over the water with Florida and continue to try to look for ways to decrease our use of potable water. And I think I liked Jaime's Corning's goal of reduction in water withdrawal, because really that's what we're trying to achieve with Waterhub, is not have to pull additional water from the watershed and trying to maximize what we discharge and reuse it on campus. So with Atlanta, as well as DeKalb County, where we're located, sorry for the acronym CSO, it does not stand for Chief Security Officer, Combined Sewer Overflow, which most of you probably know, but we've had a lot of issues within Atlanta and DeKalb. There's a very large infrastructure replacement projects going on, middle of the roads closed, and Emory recognized that we needed to do our own internal investment on our infrastructure and not just rely on both the city and the county. So that was the impetus of looking at the Waterhub and moving forward. And in general, using FY19, given that FY20 data was a little skewed without having most students on campus, we were using a little over 360 million gallons per year, and fortunately have been able to use close to 40% of our HVAC cooling water makeup from the reclaimed water. We have not used irrigation yet. So right now we are not permitted for irrigation, but hopefully in the future we can use it for irrigation. And looking for other opportunities outside of just utility water. So again, similar to Corning, we've looked at stormwater recapture. We've looked at greywater reuse. We've looked at low flow fixtures. I will say that our greywater reuse, would love to hear from those who have been successful with it. We've struggled with our greywater reuse systems. And so now we actually just have that water flow back into the sanitary sewer and get processed into the Waterhub, because our greywater reuse systems were very maintenance intensive. And then with regards to our rainwater capture, while a great feature, it didn't provide the consistent water makeup we needed. So again, the Waterhub is able to pull from our sanitary sewer system and provides that continuous water makeup. Here just shows the tracking of where I think everyone starts once they have their water reduction goals. They try to have occupant participation. Everyone did their energy efficiency and water efficiency low flow fixtures early on, the water capture, and then again, hopefully moving on to a reuse system. Next slide. So just a little background on Waterhub. It's designed to process up to 400,000 gallons per day, which would be about 40% of our total water used. We intended to use it at both the steam plant for condensate makeup, as well as cooling tower makeup and toilet flushing. I will shed light on our steam plant condensate makeup. One of the lessons learned from that is that the conductivity of the water was too high to be used at the steam plant. So right now, we are looking at adding reverse osmosis to help control the conductivity so we can use it at the steam plant. So that's something that, for those of you who are thinking about a reclaimed water facility, I would offer that looking at the water chemistry requirements and really defining that in the design of your facility is critical up front. And we did look at it. I think none of us realized that the actual sanitary sewer coming into the facility had conductivity spikes, and we needed to have a way to process that. The technology, the biomimetic technology is using what we would call root technology. It's not all just natural root systems. There's synthetic root systems with it as well. But the process allows for a very low chemical, other than chlorine, it's a very low chemical use treatment facility, and which, again, I'll speak to our discharge permit because that became an issue, but I think with regards to sustainability, it stands out against other types of reuse facilities. And the water savings, we're using a power or a water purchase agreement format, and there were considerable savings that were projected based on receiving a sewer credit from our local watershed, because the watershed would not have to process the sewer. I'm going to speak a little bit more about that. That has actually been problematic because after several changes in administration at the watershed management, they are no longer recognizing the sewer credit. And I think they recognize it technically, they just haven't figured out how to recognize it in the regulations and pass those savings back to Emory and the Waterhub. Next slide. So here's circling back on the design considerations. We were fortunate to have a location very close to a main sewer line in our facilities management compound. We were very worried about odor, and so having it located in the middle of campus was a concern. So we we did locate it near our facilities, but odor has not been a problem. I'll state that right up front. But it is advantageous if you can find a location near one of your main sanitary sewer discharges to help reduce pumping costs and as well as pipe distribution. The sizing of it similar for those who size other type of what I would call electrical systems. You have peaks and valleys to your usage, and so we have tried to size it a little closer to base load, and recognizing that we're maxed out during summer demands and we have some excess capacity during shoulder months or when we don't have high occupancy. So again, making sure we can use it at the steam plant, that will help with our winter usage. And the water quality, again, the cooling towers, we worked with our water treatment vendor and they did a great job of adjusting what additions they had to make locally so we could get our cycles of concentration back up very quickly. So that was very helpful. And the other benefits that might not be as obvious to everyone, are the sustainability, the educational, and the aesthetic. So, we conduct a large number of tours every year through the facility. It is also hopefully a pilot that can be replicated by others. One of the reasons we have it, showcased is so that whether it's other manufacturing facilities or other higher eds or even smaller municipals can try to replicate it. And our students come and take water samples from it. It's a living learning laboratory for them. And so, it really has both the sustainability considerations as well as the economic value. Next slide. So here's one of the things that I think as folks might want to consider for their location is whether you do have guidelines for reclaimed water systems and what your state EPD guidelines are. We were fortunate in Georgia to have that supported by Georgia EPD guidelines, but then having our local watershed management company or jurisdiction actually implement those guidelines is where we've run into some issues. So the guidelines are issued, but your local authority is the one who develops basically the regulations that you need to follow. And so when we first started the Waterhub, we were not required to have an industrial discharge permit. And it was right before we came online that the county decided we should hold a discharge permit. And it wasn't problematic at the time because the discharge permit was going to be a self-reporting and everyone recognized that we weren't adding anything to the water so that what we were discharging would have already been what was in the water if it had just flowed straight through to DeKalb and hadn't been extracted by the Waterhub. Unfortunately, what's come back around is an interpretation that the county is only looking at our discharge and they're seeing that there's constituents such as phosphorus existing in the discharge, and they're not taking into consideration that those constituents were in there in the influent. So they've now put us under an industrial discharge permit with limits that really can't be met unless we look at it as a mass balance. So really what we're saying is we're not putting anything back into the water we're discharging. It's just more concentrated. So we do blend it with some clean water overflow. So we're still working that out with the county. And then the big financial I alluded to earlier was that in Atlanta, I know Jaime said, so water's cheap. Well, water for us, the water rate's about $15 a kgal, and of that, close to $11 is for the sewer component. And so we had expected to receive a credit of some, if not all, of that sewer component because it's water that's not being treated by anyone downstream because it was actually removed from the system and reused. And unfortunately, when the facility was being designed and put into operation, the DeKalb Water Management was supportive of that. And we have documentation that they were supportive. But what's come into question now was who had the authority, and did it have to go to the council for approval, and should there have been a tariff created just for this type of credit? So really right now the credit's going unrecognized. And, you know, as I mentioned, we just celebrated our 6th anniversary. And so if I can emphasize anything for anyone considering a facility, it's really getting those type of commitments formalized up front, because now that the facility is built and operating, the leverage just comes down to, would we have to shut it down in order to push a decision, which none of us want to do. I mean, it's providing a benefit to Emory and the county and the downstream city of Atlanta, who actually has the water treatment facility that receives our sanitary sewer. So not to scare anyone off, just want everyone to know, you know, kind of lessons learned at Emory. So next slide, please. Again, I referenced earlier, it's similar to a power purchase agreement. It's a water purchase agreement. We lease the property. A third party designed, owns, and operates the facilities. It did not cost Emory any upfront capital. We pay for the water we receive. And if it's not available, we don't have to pay for it. So again, it's an ideal situation. It's really as though we're purchasing the water from a third-party utility. Next slide. Just to recap, you know, it's the risks associated with a third-party agreement. You're going to be working with that entity for the next 20 years, if that's the term. I think it really, you know, you need to go into it as a partnership up front. Most likely they'll be on your facility grounds or nearby. And so having that working relationship, you know, we unfortunately, I don't know how everyone's utility locates go, but we've definitely hit their lines a number of times. And it's, you know, that phone call we have to make that says, sorry, can you turn your system off and isolate while we repair your line for you? We also, the price structure can be negotiated to help fit whatever your budgeting models are. So whether it's fixed price or an index to the local utility rate, but again, focusing on the value of that sewer credit, I think is instrumental for both parties, and getting that formal commitment from the authority that would have been treating your discharge. And again, so just highlight again, no, that's okay, you can move on. Cut cycles of concentration at the cooling towers, we're back up at 8. We did not have any additional chemical cost that would have made the project prohibitive or unseen costs. We are looking at the reverse osmosis for the steam plant, and we did find that there's some things going down our sanitary sewer that we didn't know were happening. So animal bedding was one of them. It ended up looking like concrete in the intake pumps. And so we backtracked and found out that our Department of Animal Resources was just flushing their animal bedding down the sink. So we were able to send that to compost now. And red highlight, please have your sewer credit in place prior to construction. So thank you and look forward to your questions. Oh, sorry, last slide, highlighting that it is a living learning laboratory for those at the university. And you know, we really see that extra value, and it's not always taken into consideration in your economic models. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Joan. And I particularly appreciate this update, since it was 5 years ago that you joined us into Better Buildings before. So this is really great to see. Our final panelist today is Ken Rosenfeld, who's the Director of State and Local Affairs at the Building Owners and Managers Association International. Since joining BOMA in 2017, Ken has provided strategic and technical assistance to the nationwide network of BOMA local associations and state coalitions in support of their advocacy efforts. He also manages BOMA's Industry Defense Fund and oversees industry sustainability initiatives. Ken, looking forward to hearing more about the W Squared Challenge.
Well, thank you, and good morning to everybody. Thank you for joining this session. And a thank you to Hannah first and everyone at the Better Buildings program. We at BOMA always enjoy working with Better Buildings, not only because of the important work they do, but they're great to work with. So thank you to everyone at Better Buildings. My presentation will be a little different from the previous speakers. They did a great job sharing some best practices. Our story today is a little simpler, but we think just as important when it comes to saving water. For those who might not know BOMA, again, as Hannah said, we are the Building Owners and Managers Association, so we're representing the commercial real estate sector. The story we'll want to share today is the W Squared Challenge, a program that we ran that had remarkable success. W Squared standing for water and waste. A lot of people guessed that, but thought I'd better mention it. So let me start off with why we created this challenge. It was based on two very simple ideas on your screen. First, our belief that water and waste are the next frontier of sustainability efforts in the real estate sector. From experience, we know that energy use, energy efficiency are well understood. There's a long track record of leadership in the real estate industry. It's ingrained in our organization at BOMA. That's not to say there's not plenty more to be done regarding energy, but it felt like it was time to see what could be done on water conservation, waste output. And secondly, you can't manage what you don't measure. And this is a message that probably sounds like an old cliche at this point, but we think that's because it's true. So we turned to look at benchmarking. There are studies that show that the mere act of measuring often results in performance improvements. We've absolutely seen that in energy use. So the question is, what if we could create a voluntary program to encourage benchmarking of water and waste, where all the evidence seemed to be that few properties were benchmarking, they were just paying the bills. Kudos to Better Buildings on that Slido poll at the start, which showed attendees saying the biggest hurdle to water conservation is data tracking. So that's what we thought too. Next slide, please. So we formed what we think was a very effective partnership to make this program a success. So BOMA managed the program. It was an idea that originated out of our Energy and Environment Committee. It was supported by Yardi, which is a BOMA cornerstone partner, an organization that really shares our views on sustainability through market transformation. And we partnered closely with Energy Star. We have a very long-standing relationship with Energy Star. And in this case, they were, again, a great resource as well as helping to promote the challenge. Energy Star saw the tremendous opportunity in having the industry run a voluntary challenge, particularly on water and waste, where we could push new users to use Energy Star tools. So what is the W Squared Challenge? We set it up as a 2-year program. It's now complete. Participating properties committed to benchmarking water and or waste. We understood that waste was a bit of a different animal with different hurdles. So we just encouraged as many properties as possible to do what they could. But of course, we're focusing today mostly on the water side. We needed 2 years to give enough time to get everyone used to reporting and then start to implement changes. Participants had to benchmark in Portfolio Manager. And this was a key point because we found almost no one knew that Energy Star supported water and waste benchmarking in addition to energy. It's free, it's available, it works well, and it was just a matter of spreading the word. Participants received progress reports and technical assistance, and very important to us, participation was open to anyone and everyone. So you did not have to be a member of BOMA, you did not have to be a commercial property. We just wanted to reach as large an audience as possible. So hopefully this is already clear how this type of challenge could benefit the industry. We could advance the next generation of industry sustainability efforts. We could widely publicize Portfolio Manager as a tool for tracking water and waste in addition to energy. We could demonstrate the power of voluntary benchmarking, which the industry is very interested in. And we could also identify challenges, start to identify some policy solutions. So then it brings us to the question, why should any property individually participate? And this was the big question at the outset. We were asking folks to choose voluntarily to do more work. We felt that we had a substantial list of benefits to offer. You could better understand your water and waste usage, receive progress reports, compare your performance to your peers. Ideally, you would see quickly reductions in operating costs. You would receive guidance, best practices. And of course, one of the benefits of any challenge type program is to receive recognition for your work as well. So we created a participant logo and encouraged its use. And all that said, we had no idea who would sign up. Our friends at Energy Star, with all of their experience, said that if you get 100 properties to sign up, it would be a big success. So there is no better set of metrics than this slide when it comes to our W squared challenge. Our top goal was to get participation, and this wildly exceeded all expectations. We had nearly 2,000 properties participate. They were in more than 400 cities, spread out across the country in markets of all size. About half of the properties were office, but there was great participation from really all other sectors, residential, industrial. We had data centers, we had some government buildings. It was really impressive to see everybody signing up. But it's the last number, the circle to your right, that we think is the most telling. Nearly 500 million square feet of property were shared with the challenge in Portfolio Manager. So properties weren't just signing up, they were participating. They were doing the benchmarking, they were sharing the data with us. So it wasn't a matter of just making the commitment, it was actually following through. So let me touch briefly on the resources that were provided to the participants. They received monthly emails. There was a webinar series to share best practices. On the screen right now is an example of a resource that we think will live on long past the challenge. We created a set of 2 improvement guides, we called them, one focused on water and one on waste, each containing a checklist of basic steps that could be taken to improve performance. So we look forward to continuing to circulate those around. And on the next slide, you can see just one example of the resonance, maybe the reach of this program. If you look very carefully on your screen, or if your resolution is good enough, you'll notice that this is one of the improvement guides translated into Mandarin. And our affiliate in China read about the program and asked if they could translate these improvement guides and circulate them. And of course, we were happy to give them the go ahead to do that. We will never know the full extent of how the challenge reached properties across America and around the world, but we were certainly thrilled to see it have this kind of reach. And perhaps most important for the participants was the quarterly progress reports that we provided. They could see data for their individual properties, they could track progress, they could see how their use intensity compared to averages across all participants. There was nothing overly complex here, I'll admit, but these reports allowed properties to see what was going well, what wasn't going well, and start conversations at home on where changes could be made. We know of one property, for instance, that identified and repaired a water leak in a building, a serious leak, and they learned about it because they saw a number that surprised them on their challenge report. So it just shows the power of this kind of data. We were sometimes asked to provide aggregate numbers, right? So how much are we saving across the challenge? Honestly, we were less interested in that, at least in the short term, and we were focused on getting participation and changing behavior that will lead to longer term results. But I'll share this quickly just as one example, comparing one 2018 quarter to the same quarter in 2019, we saw savings of more than 1.6 million gallons of water, over 200 tons of waste. Those numbers sound large. You can actually argue either way, whether they're significant on their own. But again, our real focus was on getting those participation numbers up and finding the anecdotal evidence that supported changes in behavior. Let me share one good example, for instance. LBA Realty was an active challenge participant. They already were known for having an existing commitment to sustainability, but they found inspiration in this challenge. One of their large properties in Phoenix, pictured here, underwent an audit process at the beginning of the challenge. It wasn't just for W squared, it was also for their BOMA 360 designation. It was also for their LEED Silver certification. So I know a lot of you are dealing with juggling a lot of programs. But in this case, engineers in the audit realized that aerators were not consistent throughout the building's restrooms and tenant kitchens. And recognizing this as a pretty easy fix, the property team upgraded 132 bathroom faucet aerators and 30 kitchen sink aerators. It's a 26-floor building. And this improvement led to a 37% reduction in building water use, what we thought was an astounding number, a really good example of a low-cost solution that had a significant impact. And even though our emphasis was on participation, this was a challenge. We did identify winners or champions of the contest, so I certainly want to give them a shout out here. We recognized them as best we could during the pandemic. We were hoping to have everybody in person to celebrate during our 2020 conference, but the pandemic got in the way of that. But we also mailed awards to the champions for them to show off. In the large portfolio category, Shorenstein won with a really remarkable reduction, 56% reduction in water use over the length of the challenge, joined by UBS and principal real estate investors. And then we also had a small portfolio category. The champion was America's Capital Partners, joined by Unico and AGLO Burbank and Kilroy. Also had waste champions as well. But I want to finish up with a couple of stories that really reflect what we think is a shift in the industry and a new, or at least growing attention to water and waste. So let me quickly mention two stories that we collected along the way. One, Ballantyne Corporate Park, there with Northwood office in Charlotte. This is a really large 500+ acre corporate park, 40 Class A office buildings. And Ballantyne had a reputation for being a very responsible development, but Northwood decided to leverage the W Squared Challenge. They saw it as an opportunity to expand beyond their energy successes and demonstrate some leadership in water and waste. Their facilities team switched to a new waste hauler that had individual scales on their trucks and could give them exactly the information they wanted. The team started holding recycling seminars with tenants. Now that they were using Portfolio Manager, they could see differences among similar buildings when it came to water and waste usage and try to pinpoint problems. And they also started communicating information back out to tenants, which we thought was really significant. They added a screen in the lobby of each building displaying the building's energy, water, and waste footprints. And going forward, they hope to roll out a lot of these ideas to their whole portfolio. On the right is the residences at La Cantera, which is with USAA Real Estate in San Antonio. This is an attractive, high-density, multi-family building, part of a mixed-use master plan development. San Antonio, of course, a location that often experiences drought conditions and restrictions on irrigation and water features. So they, again, tried to leverage this challenge to figure out, well, how can we create an attractive property that Also places an emphasis on resilient design and green construction and focus on water conservation. And they decided to install Energy Star appliances, including dishwashers, high performance faucets and shower heads, relocated water heaters so they were close to fixtures. And then they implemented a comprehensive stormwater system that directed runoff and installed a system that collects water from the air conditioning condensate. Water that would typically be runoff is now treated, stored in a giant cistern, and used for irrigation and water features. So combined with a landscaping plan that was appropriate for the area, they now find they can meet all of their irrigation needs from their collection system. So those are just a couple of stories. Let me finish with one last indicator that maybe provided a little external validation of our efforts. As part of its 100th anniversary celebration, ASAE, an association I'm sure many of you are familiar with, they produced a report highlighting 100 associations that will save the world, they said. And we're very proud to say BOMA was included in that list and featured as a leading example in the category of sustainability. And the program that they highlighted was the W Squared Challenge. So for whatever reason properties chose to participate with us, whether it was just focused on cost savings, whether it was on achieving sustainability goals, whatever it was, we do feel like this is making a big difference. We're happy to hear that this was helping to save the world, and certainly delivers on the message that I can close with, which is that voluntary benchmarking works. It's amazing what can be accomplished just by finding the data and looking at the data. So with that, I will stop there. Thank you again to Better Buildings. We're always excited to share the story of the W Squared Challenge. Happy to answer any questions, and please, anyone on this session, please reach out at any time. We're always looking to partner on our sustainability and our resilience work. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Ken. And a lot of the wonderful organizations you mentioned are Better Buildings partners and may even be in line with us. So I appreciate all those examples and shout outs. With that, I'd like to invite our other speakers to join us again on video, because we are going to be moving to about 10 minutes of Q&A. It is not too late to submit your question on Slido, or you can go ahead and hit that thumbs up to vote for another question to move it to the top, as we'll probably just get to a couple here. So if we could bring up the Slido onto our screen. I'll start with our most popular question here, which I think originally came up during Jaime's presentation, but really is relevant to a lot of our speakers, which is how do you balance prioritizing water amongst other sustainability or carbon-related goals? So Jaime, do you want to kick off with that, since I remember your slide with all of the goals that you have going on?
Yeah, I can go ahead and talk about that, Hannah. So I wouldn't say we, prioritize over, any water goals against other sustainability goals or carbon related goals we have. I would say all of them are equally important. I mean, we do have very aggressive, set of goals towards our 2030 set of goals. So each of those goals are very important to reach, to meet our objectives, right? I would say, however, as we saw in that slide, we did meet 4 out of 6 objectives. And one of the biggest challenges was waste to landfill, right? So what I can say is that there is a big focus right now in, tackling that challenge and seeing what we can do to reduce our waste to landfill footprint. And then talking a little bit about, energy and water. That they don't compete, right? They're a synergy. As I talked about, the true cost of water, that doesn't just include the cost of water and disposing it, right? There's other costs related to energy in there as well, that we should account for in there.
Great, thanks so much, Jaime. Joan, would you like to also weigh in on that, since I see that the next question is similar but directed to Ken?
Yeah, so let me so what I think has helped, at least at Emory, and you mentioned with my new title, I I cover resilience. And so our office has combined for resilience and sustainability. And we've actually had more water outages in the last 2 years than electric outages. And so it's amazing how when you factor in resilience and reliability, that it helps prioritize water. And so the things we can do to reduce our independence on water or our reliability on water has helped elevate it in priority, at least over the last few years. I think, luckily we had forward-looking senior management and goals really it was probably 8 years ago with the Waterhub. And that had a lot to do with droughts and the cost of water. But now with resilience, I think it's helped prioritize water, and on-campus water storage is probably something that we'll be trying to expand just because of the potable water outages.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's an interesting perspective. Yes,
Yeah,
please, Ken.
Just add one perspective too, because it's such a good question, and especially now, right? We're at a very unusual time due to the pandemic, and we're starting to see buildings reoccupied. Most never closed, as I'm sure everybody on this session knows, but they're starting to be reoccupied, and that's leading to really interesting questions about, well, how much energy are we going to use now? How much water are we going to use now? Is this just open season because we're so happy to be back in our building? What about improving indoor air quality, and is that going to increase energy use? Really interesting issues to keep an eye on. So I just wanted to add that we're taking a look at that from our perspective. We're talking to our friends at Energy Star, for instance, and I think you'll hear a lot more about how the reopening is going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point about the pandemic, Ken. Well, Ken, I'll keep you in the hot seat here then, since the next question is directed to you, which is, did you see any benefits in tackling water and waste together?
Well, I'd say anecdotally we did, in that buildings that decided to participate, even if they weren't used, in fact, as I said earlier in my talk, a lot of people are used to water, at least tracking their water bills. Waste seems to be kind of a black hole for data, right? And I haven't found many people who disagree on that. They just don't know what's going on other than they paid the bill. So we knew it was a little bit different and had to be handled a little differently. And some folks were a little hesitant to even try tracking their waste. But we found, just by participating, just by getting people started looking at these new tools in Portfolio Manager, even if they started with just water, maybe they added some waste tracking too. Or if they started a water conservation program in their building, maybe they started looking at a recycling program where they didn't have one before. So we saw it leverage up. We don't have numbers to back that up, but I can't tell you how many stories I heard. So it's just an example of, the more you do this, the more you want to do.
Yeah, and that's the issue and challenge around data for waste is certainly what we found in the Better Buildings Waste pilot as well, which I know we've spoken about, Ken. I think that these next two questions, because they're both codes related, I'm going to kind of combine here. So the question is, the biggest hurdle to water use reduction seems to be the existing code barriers to using recycling or recirculating gray water for use. How can we overcome that? And I'm going to kind of combine that with just the question about codes in general. And that's open for any of our panelists if you'd like to jump in and address it.
Yeah, so I can address the second question on why isn't rainwater harvesting mandated by codes. I wouldn't say that's a situation. So most of the projects that I showed were international. I think, it really depends on the local authorities, what the codes are for, harvesting, rainwater system. But I wouldn't say, there's no code for that, rainwater harvesting. I would say it's more, you would have to check with your local authorities in what the permitting and the codes for that would be.
Yeah, and I would,
Joan,
I would,
I was gonna say, I saw you nodding, so go for it.
yeah, well, so I just think you have to start early in the process. And I do think a lot of the states have started adopting guidelines. And it's maybe having some joint conversations. So, Georgia EPD was very helpful in that they got on a joint call with us and our local water management authority to help talk through what some interpretations of the guidelines are. But I also think the more you can bring in your peers, so if there's other entities within your jurisdiction that are looking for those types of code adoptions to allow the use of whether it's gray water or totally reclaimed water, you get more results with more voices. So I would just suggest trying to reach out to your other peers, even if they're competitors. I mean, I don't think this is an area for competition per se. And so if you can get more people on board, reaching out and helping facilitate it. I think most of the local utility folks are overworked and have a lot of other priorities on their plate. And so you almost have to issue drafts for them for review. What we did was we actually shared with them other parts of the country that have very good, guidance and code regulations. And so I think it's an education process first to start.
Mm-hmm. Ken, anything to add before I go to the next question, Matt?
Yeah, just to echo that, as someone who works in government relations, I'll put in a pep talk for advocacy, right? You would be surprised how easy it is and how rewarding it is if this is an issue that you think can make a difference to find partners who agree with you, take your story to local elected officials or sustainability staff, but figure out what the hurdles are and just point out what the opportunity is. I would not assume that everywhere that this is not allowed, that it's been thought through and that there's a reason for it. So sometimes just doing a little homework and presenting your case can make a big difference. We work on codes all the time. They're always changing. It can sound confusing from a distance, but you really can make a difference if you just start having these conversations.
Great, thanks, Ken. So I think I'll pop down to this question for Joan then, which is, Joan, has Emory considered pairing with another local university or nearby town to tackle water management for the area so the infrastructure is better solved? If so, what's the status of that?
I think it's an interesting question. We are actually located in DeKalb County and receive our water from DeKalb County, but we annexed to the city of Atlanta 2 years ago. So our leverage within the county is pretty low right now because we pay into the city of Atlanta. I would be interested to see if anyone's had success with, sure, they'll take a check. We could stroke them a check to help them with their water management issues, but they're pretty protective of their water models. They have worked with us and, we've repaired their lines that come through the campus all the time. They're happy to have us, but there doesn't seem to be, because they're not regulated, they don't have oversight by the Public Service Commission. They don't have that requirement to do that integrated resource plan that looks outwards 5, 10, 15 years, which I really think would be beneficial. They're just reacting to wherever the crisis is of the day or the week. And so I think it's a hard thing to tackle when you don't have the forced planning that the other utilities do. So great question.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think if we could briefly do just our last question we'll have time for here before some conclusion slides and resources, which is that how does harvesting the rainwater affect the amount of water going into local water supply? So I'm not sure, Joan or Jaime, if either of you have looked into that for your organizations, or if not, we can also pass.
So I'll just offer that, rainwater would normally go into storm, which that goes back to that, combined sewer overflow, whether the storm is eventually catching up to the sanitary sewer. So it doesn't really positively impact water supply. They don't, unless the downstream, water municipality has some other type of reuse that they're using for it. But I think that's why it's so important to have the distributed local rainwater capture so that you can use it, because I don't think in most cases the water utilities are using rainwater for that.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks, Joan. Anything to add from our other panelists before we move on here? All right, excellent. Well, there were so many questions we didn't get to, but I will say that our contact information for all our panelists is at the end of the slides here, so you can still reach out and contact our panelists. So if we could hop back over the slides, I want to just mention that we do have some additional resources, solutions that we talked about today, including more information, in fact, on Emory University and Owens Corning, that you can check out when you get these slides and the recording. And in fact, while you're on the Solutions Center, let's see here, the Better Building Solutions Center has over 3,000 solutions to help you find proven and cost-effective strategies to help you reach your energy, water, and waste reduction goals. So we can watch a quick video to learn more about the Solutions Center. Great, thanks so much. And I will say that if you've been enjoying yourself at Summit so far, I hope you'll also check out our Better Buildings Summer Series, which is a webinar series that'll be going through the rest of summer. We've got some great things planned, including, since we talked a little bit about waste on this, I'll plug that we have a waste session happening at the beginning of August. But you can go to the Solution Center on events and programs and events, and that's where you can find registration for this. And finally, I would just like to thank all of our panelists for your insights and your perspective and your time today. It was wonderful to go so in depth about the water programs and the incredible accomplishments that you all have done and personally for your organization or been able to pull together for the larger industry, in your case, Ken. We hope to hear from attendees, and thank you so much for joining this session on how progress flows.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And also, there's a feedback survey that is starting in Slido right now for all of our attendees. Those are anonymous, so other people won't see your responses, and that'll be open until tomorrow. So if you could give us feedback, we'd really appreciate it. Thanks.